So there I was in my usual depressed days, going about my everyday life, scrolling through one of the legal cartoon websites out there, when one of them caught my attention. From the cover art alone, it looked like your typical standard slice of life anime, with a bunch of happy-go-lucky high school girls being displayed prominently at the front. But as I looked closer, I noticed some curious factors within this cover art. Well, first of all, the girls were holding guns, and I don't mean like small toy guns, I mean military issued like machine guns, assault rifles and the like. Not only that, but as I delved deeper into this cover art, I noticed that the bottom half of it was torn away, as if someone had just ripped apart the facade that the show was trying to put on and revealed what was truly underneath it. From the get-go, I could see that the color palette had switched to something darker, with dark grey, dark blue being contrasted against the brighter red and bright blue that was being shown at the front. Not only that, but growing along the bottom border of this cover art were a plant that I know is rather famous within the anime community, as it's usually synonymous with the theme of death. So with all this in mind, I knew that the show was trying to put on an act like a predator luring in its next meal, getting those weebs out there who are expecting nothing more but cute girls going about their high school life. If you're still confused about what I'm talking about, well, I'm talking about the anime known as Lycoris Recoil. And while I like to think that I was the only one who found this golden nugget within the anime community, like as if I'm a prospector digging through one of the last dried riverbeds out there in the wild west of America, well, I understand that more or less everybody in Japan is crazy about it, considering most of its light novel and Blu-ray boxes has been flying off the shelves rather quickly. To give you a quick rundown about what this show is about, imagine if you would the fictional world known as Japan, where instead of employing adults to work as police officers to maintain the peace and stability of the nation, they instead decided to go with high school girls to assassinate anyone they suspect could be a threat to the country's stability. You know, without providing this suspect any chance to defend themselves, to explain themselves, or hell, even giving them a lawyer or even a court of law to judge them. Nah, the easiest solution is always to point a barrel in their face and pull the trigger. Now that I think about it, that sounds quite familiar to America. But let's not go there. Anyway, the show focuses around two main characters, Takina and Chisato, two high school girls who are part of an organization known as Direct Attack, or DA. Now this organization is the one responsible for maintaining the peace, as I mentioned earlier, but as you watch the show, you start to notice that this organization seems to have some fault, despite it trying to display itself as a white knight in shining armor protecting its lady Japan. Well, the show starts off with Takina being ostracized from the organization and her own group after disobeying orders from her superior during one of her missions just to try to save the life of her groupmate who was being held at gunpoint by some gangsters from what I understand. Despite her valiant attempt to save her teammate by more or less firing at everything within the vicinity, her team leader Fuki understandably sides with DA in reallocating Takina to a place known as Café Lycoris. Now Takina is clearly rather pissed at this decision, as it's an assault on her pride and honor. To put this into perspective, it's like being sent to the Siberian wasteland after you just disobeyed Daddy Stalin's order of no retreat back in World War II, because you clearly saw that if you had followed his orders, you were more or less signing the death warrant for yourself and every man that you commanded. And so, Takina showed an interest in Café Lycoris the same way a child would if it's being force-fed a vegetable through an aeroplane spoon. You could see that the only thought in mind that Takina had was trying to find a way to get back into the graces of DA. But after spending some time with the people at Café Lycoris Recoil, like her mentor and partner Chisato, the cafe owner Mika, a former agent known as Mizuki, and a hacker that they pick up along the way known as Kurumi, the group will soon find itself being embroiled in a conspiracy that might shake not only the country but DA itself to its core. Now, to be fair, the plotline of Lycoris Recoil might sound rather bog standard. And truth be told, I have to agree with that, as we've probably already seen that in a few other TV shows or mediums out there about a totalitarian state-controlled peace for the better of its people. But the beauty of Lycoris Recoil really comes about from the interaction between the characters, as they try to fit into a world that is wrangling with several dark themes like death, purpose, and even the price of peace. And the fascinating thing is that the show is doing all this while still trying to push a plotline about a slice of life anime between Chisato and Takina as they explore one another and grow into the people that they want to be. There were times where I felt like the writers were throwing whatever they felt was interesting at that point in time. I mean, the prospect of a nation's peace being kept by a bunch of high school girls with guns is already bonkers enough. But then within the very first episode, you find out that the organization is more or less being managed by a super intelligence known as Radiata. And that's not even the craziest part about the show even. I'll try not to go into spoilers here, but all I'm gonna say is that the show goes into fields of like superheroes, cybernetics, and even some philosophical discussion about state and, freedom and how much people are willing to give up for it. Lycoris Recoil is able to intertwine these themes it wants to explore into its own characters and plots elegantly, and this is a breath of fresh air compared to Western media these days, where it feels like their messages are being pushed into your face rather oppressively, and the characters are nothing more but mouthpieces for the writers to use as a way to lecture you about their own values.
So all of this just feels like projecting a lot of shit onto me.
See.
No, I'm doing this.
Okay, this is completely new territory.
You serious?
Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. After all, stories have always been used as a way for someone to raise awareness regarding an issue they feel passionate about, or even teach a lesson about something that they feel people should know about. But I feel like modern pieces these days seem to have forgotten how to do it tastefully. It seems now that stories are being written for a value, instead of values being written into a story. The two might sound rather similar, but there's a stark difference between them. We have to only look at Lycoris Recoil to see how this is done properly. In one of the scenes, we have a police officer who has started to suspect that his government was covering up some of the incidents happening in Tokyo, and so with his partner beside him, they go and investigate one of the crime scenes to see what they can learn further. Now, the official story given to the public was that a train derailment had caused a collapse of one of the subway tunnels. The truth, however, was that DA had a fight with one of the main terrorist cells that was trying to kill off their agents. Before these terrorists could be defeated, however, one of them set off a bomb within the subway tunnels, causing it to collapse and burying alive the girls within. Let me remind you, DA's agents are high school girls. Lycoris Recoil just showed a bunch of kids being killed off in a passing scene without a second thought. They didn't even delve into the matter that deeply. And it was more or less a background matter amongst an episode that was focusing on Chisato and Takina's date. And that really blew my mind while I was watching Lycoris Recoil. The fact that the show was putting all these heavy matters into the backdrop and focusing more on the interactions between Chisato and Takina really reminds you of the world that they were living in, despite the cute and bubbly interactions the two were having. And to add salt to the wound, this very same police officer then says that he is okay with the cover-up, as long as he gets to keep children like Chisato and Takina safe, not knowing that these very same kids are the one paying the price for his so-called peace and stability by risking their lives every day. If the police officer had truly known about this, would he still be okay with what was happening? Such themes are explored within Lycoris Recoil through the eyes of their characters in a natural manner. They behave and react to those situations in a way that we expect them to. They do not behave like perfect beings who knows all the correct answer, but instead sometimes are lost, confused, or even take the wrong actions when faced with a problem or situation that the teams are exploring. And really, this allows us to connect with them even more, as truth be told, most of us will probably do the same if we are placed in their shoes. Lycoris Recoil does this thing where it places more of its darker and complicated themes behind its light-hearted slice of life portion of the show. Most of the episodes usually revolve around Chisato and Takina's daily life within Café Lycoris, while in the backdrop, serious and darker machinations are going about without their knowledge. Well, for the first half that is, but that's as much spoilers as I'm gonna give. Funnily enough, the show really tries to distract you from what's really happening behind the scenes, especially so with its fight scenes, because my gosh, its fight scenes are perhaps one of the most fluid animations I've ever seen. You could feel every impact from every single punch, kick or gunshot that the character deals out or receives. You could see their face change emotion whenever they feel the pain or satisfaction after a long day. You really feel your heart connects to these characters as they go about their daily lives, trying to navigate through this complicated world of Lycoris, filled with politics, espionage, and concepts that a high school girl should not be tackling with. Lycoris Recoil is a must-watch anime in my books and received a great recommendation from me for anybody who needs to fill up their time instead of doing anything useful with their lives like me. The show explores some complex themes that others would usually shy away from, and it has received some criticism for doing so depending on who you ask. Its characters might look like cardboard caricatures of tropes during the first early episodes, but as the show continues and trots down its designated dark path, you soon see the depth within each and every one of them and how well the writer has thought about it. Lycoris Recoil is a deceiving anime that is able to encapsulate its haunting and unnerving utopic world. Considering it's a standalone series with only 13 episodes, Lycoris Recoil is still able to expertly tell its plot while still navigating through the complex concepts that are vital to its story. If you ever need something that is beautiful to watch while still providing your brain with a little teaser, then I suggest you take aim at Lycoris Recoil and give it a shot, because it really deserves all the attention and success it is getting. And if that still fails to convince you to watch it, I mean, it's a show about cute girl with guns fighting terrorists. What's cooler than that?
店が潰れないようにと思っただけです。大切な場所なんでしょ。タキナ、ありがとう。ちょい。